Hello and welcome to Language Matters. Language Matters is a series on various aspects and components of language education in the school context. Today we have sign language, a discussion on sign language. It is a continuation of the previous discussion on sign language with Dr. Melissa Wallang. In the previous discussion we had discussed what is sign language, how it works in the school context, how to document and disseminate the resources for teachers and children as well as parents for promoting sign language in school education, particularly making the classroom an inclusive one. Today, let me again introduce Dr. Melissa. Melissa, welcome to the studio. Melissa is a member of faculty in the Department of Education, Languages and Social Science in the Northeast Regional Institute of Education, Shillong, a constituent of NCERT. Melissa, we had discussed how sign language can be promoted in school and why there is a necessity to promote and include those children with hearing impairment and deafness. So let me request you today to go a bit further on explaining how to contextualize sign language in the school and how to make use of the resources available and enable our children. Can you please throw some more light?
Once again, thank you, Meghanathan. For giving me this chance to explain a little bit about sign language. Like yesterday, I had talked about the importance of understanding the concept of language, first of all, because we have always continued to take language as a language which is only produced only by our vocal cords, produced by the air coming out from our lungs. So that concept of language we've discussed a little bit yesterday. And what's important for us to understand is that even we had already discussed what is sign language, how sign language is considered to be a natural language, that it has a grammar as systematic as any spoken language. That we've already discussed yesterday. But now today I'd just like to make a little bit of presentation regarding, understanding a deaf child coming to the classroom. What is his background? Because that is more important for any teacher to understand in the context of classroom interaction.
Absolutely.
So, and as you're aware also that, hearing loss, there are several degrees of hearing loss. And usually, if you, I will go to my PPT to explain a little bit again about sign language, that according to the Ethnologue, there are 2.7 million people in India who speak sign language.
It's a huge number.
It's a huge number, yes. And when we say Indian Sign Language, it comprises of several languages, in the sense that, it covers sign language spoken in Delhi, spoken in Calcutta, in the south, in Northeast, and even in Northeast alone, when you look at spoken languages, we have 70% diversity. Therefore, you will find the same kind of diversity even within the deaf communities. So, variations occur either at the lexical level or at the sentence level, but that needs a little further research. But from whatever research we've conducted, we have found that there are several varieties in India. And now, when we talk about sign language in India, now everybody is aware of what is sign language. Okay, sign language is a language spoken by people who cannot speak. It's more tolerable. Even, it's kind of reached that status where it's accepted somehow. But then, when we go to the school as teachers, based on my research that I've conducted, the real problem lies there. Like yesterday I had said that, our national curriculum framework ensures that sign language should be the medium, but our teachers are not equipped. We don't have the resources, and it's very difficult for a single teacher to handle an inclusive classroom, and that also having multiple disabilities in a single classroom. Or reality is that mild cases of disabilities are in the classroom, not the severe cases. And for deaf children, most of the time when I go to the field, I find them in a special school. And why for deaf people? A little bit about their background also. Now we have different categories of deafness, like I had said. Now you have deaf children who may have hearing parents, and majority in India, they come from hearing families. And very few we have deaf children of deaf parents. So there's a difference there. So the language background. I'm going to the home language.
Okay.
Because when a child coming to school, we look at the home language. We try to ensure that the child understands what he's learning in the classroom through his language, right? And that I don't want to discuss in detail. We all know about the importance of mother tongue. Now, then we have hearing children of deaf parents also.
Okay, the parents may be deaf, but children are fine.
Yes. And in such cases, if you compare a deaf child of deaf parents and hearing children of deaf parents will have almost the same kind of language ability competence.
Oh.
Yes, because the process of acquiring the mother tongue is very natural. The problem is with children coming from hearing families. There is a language barrier, there is a language gap. Parents don't know how to communicate to their own child. They're not comfortable to even use sign language. They're not even taught sign language. And especially when we have parents coming from really interior areas. And most of the time it happens, a high incidence of deafness is in the rural areas. And even when they migrate to urban areas, even if they start keeping their child in the special school, parents are not aware that this language is equally important, to use with their child. Because as you know, you're an English teacher. When we look at the communication methods in the classroom, the English language pedagogy, we have many methods and approaches, right? So in deaf education, based on history of deaf education, in the name of integration, we have done many other things. And then now we've reached a stage where we talk of total communication. And in total communication is something where we incorporate all types of communication to ensure access to a language for the deaf child.
Okay.
But that is also very difficult for a single teacher to talk and sign at the same time. And the fact that in reality, it's about the attitude towards the language also.
Sign language itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
They feel that sign language is inferior, so it's not, they when they teach English, they try to find exact equivalent of English word. So they don't understand the structure, the grammar, how it operates. So sometimes teachers, they used to say that it's very difficult to teach in sign language because there's no word for this, there's no word for that.
They look at the other natural languages.
Yes.
One-to-one correspondence.
If I compare my mother tongue, which is Khasi, to English also, I won't find the exact equivalent.
Same,
right?
Yeah, true.
So language operates in a different manner. And so what happens is that when we go for vocabulary is the main means of assessing how much a child knows when he comes to school for a deaf child or even for the hearing. And based on the researches, like if you look at the hearing children, a child's vocabulary at the age of 18 months is 20 words, right? A child at the age of 24 to 27 months is expected to have how many words, right? Because their home environment has a language which they understand, right? Parents keep talking to their children and children keeps acquiring. And when they acquire vocabulary, they acquire knowledge. So imagine a deaf child in a hearing family. The communication gap is so big. And when they speak what we normally call home signs, meaning demonstrations, gestures, right? So when there is a language gap, obviously it affects cognitive development. And we talk about in NCF that comprehensible input is required, right, for cognitive development. Linguistic environment should be promoted, should be enhanced, should be rich enough for the child to understand what he's reading. Right?
True.
So these are the things. And so when I look at deaf children, this is a very good study by Conrad, and it serves a basis. It's common anywhere in the world where we find deaf children. At the age of 5 years, they will have only 200 words, vocabulary.
Much lesser than other normal children.
But 200 words, a child say probably at 2, at 3, we will have that kind of vocabulary. So when we have the problem of not understanding what they're reading, they can't make a connection between the printed word and the concept or the meaning of that word unless they do something. Say if I teach this is a copy, okay, they can say. Okay, pray to God, how do I explain that? They can't see abstract concept. You see? So, but for a hearing child, okay, the concept of praying, why do we pray? Who is God? Things that we cannot see, we understand because we hear people talk about it, the immediate environment talk about it, right? So there is a big gap.
Some cultural connect also.
Yes. So that cultural gap also is existing when it comes to deaf children. So as teachers, we need to understand that access to language is very important at an early stage for deaf children. And access to language determines how much a child also will be able to achieve in his schooling. And because of that, when they see many schools have varieties of texts and resources for children to read, right? We have primers, we have bilingual materials are very rare. You don't see a sign language as well as a written form. We don't see that. So we don't have those kind of things. And when we tell story also, I have seen teachers teaching poetry by to deaf children, a group of deaf children, by beating using a stick in the blackboard, and like Jack and Jill went up the hill. If there are 2 syllables, Jack and Jill went up the hill. They have 2 syllables, then it will be tuck tuck tuck. They'll be with a stick, as if they'll understand. I've seen and observed it with my own eyes.
How do they understand? Yeah.
And is that the way to teach poetry? Is that the way to teach nursery rhyme? And that is not even needed. So even a language assessment teaching needs to be redesigned when we take into account, when we say, okay, we will bring a deaf child in the classroom and include him. I feel that he will be more isolated.
Yeah, then the other children,
yes.
Yeah.
So they are more happy, and based on my research that I have done, I always find that, children are happy to be in the residential schools, special schools, because they get to communicate, they understand each other. If they go back home to their hearing family, nobody understands. Nobody communicates.
But we say that inclusive school, where every child, all kinds of children can be together, for which the teacher needs to be really means well equipped.
And because of the developments in inclusive education, because of training, because of the kind of exposure that teachers have these days, those who really want, those who have a positive attitude. I have seen school in my state where they often call me for training on sign language. Then I used to bring the deaf native signers to train them. And then there were 2-3 children from the small, it's in a village, interior area, where even the parents are not actually happy of keeping their children in that school, because they feel, there's a stigmatization. Yes.
Yeah.
So even the child feel embarrassed to speak with his hands. I remember this boy, and now after a lot of training, sensitizing to the entire school, 250 students are there. It's an inclusive school, and around 4 or 5, and other disabilities are also there. Around 4 or 5 deaf children are there in that school. Now everybody is signing. So how to promote that in the context of education? Infrastructure is secondary. Main thing is that the people working the school, that linguistic environment that we talk about, even a person who cooks midday meal should have at least basic communication skills in sign.
In sign language.
Yes. A teacher also should have I don't expect teachers to be master in sign language, but communication, that level where a child can come to a teacher and explain his or her problem, that level of sign language ability a teacher must have. So sensitization, and in fact, based on linguistic research, we know that even us hearing people, we acquire gestures much more than we acquire speech, right?
True.
We learn to point first, we learn to cry first, and it's all about attitude. And once we have a positive attitude in saying that it's possible to learn sign language, it's possible to teach through sign language, then things are different. We can make a change. And in fact, as per linguistic research also, you will find that, you know, if children are exposed to 2-3 languages, they're at a young age, their cognitive level is higher. But if you expose children to more than 2 modes, sign and speech, it in fact improves much more when you compare speech to speech. Okay. So yeah, you can read about it. There's a lot of studies conducted. So this is regarding that. I want teachers to understand the background of the learners when he come to the classroom. When they come to the classroom, because I've seen how in class 10, a teacher teaching maths, a deaf child is sitting in one corner. I've even placed an interpreter also in an experimental study. The problem is that the teacher cannot trust the interpreter whether the interpreter can deliver what he is teaching. So there is a conflicting role between the teacher and the interpreter. There are schools that have interpreter, but they cannot afford to have interpreters at every period in the class for every child.
True.
So these are realities.
The ultimate thing is the teacher should know at least a bit of sign language.
Yes, at least to make that environment that we talk about, you know, positive environment for the child to feel comfortable to come to school.
Fine. Yeah, that message has to reach out to the teachers.
Yes.
Okay, sign language is a natural language, it has a grammar. Teachers should actually know a bit about it, if not completely mastering the sign language, in order to enable provide an enabling environment for children to learn.
Yes.
Particularly children with hearing impaired and deafness.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
When I look at English language learning of deaf children, I don't see any big difference between them and the children in the rural areas, because English is a major barrier for many.
For any child in the rural area. Yeah.
So, and because they understand much more when they see the stories in sign language, so I thought probably maybe to promote their understanding, to bridge that understanding, you know, of sign language to English. So I've developed reading materials in a visual mode. I even tested with them in the school, and they enjoyed it and they understand. They pick up the vocabulary immediately when I ask, do you understand this word? Because they have understood it in their language, so they immediately acquire that new word. So it's very interesting. But then these materials that I've developed, they're not final. But this has to be connected to the text, so that and then this has to be connected with the way teachers handle them in the classroom, teaching them the meaning, asking them whether they've understood these words, how to use, and then maybe sometime they can give these words independently, they can make their own sentences to see. You know, and language development is not something where you teach today, tomorrow they'll, you know.
Language learning takes time, any language.
And it will differ from one child to another. So the important thing is that we provide the exposure, we try it out, we give the activities, challenge the child's, thinking when he is using English. So that is my point. I don't expect immediate results.
Fine.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Melissa, for this. Today in this sign language discussion on sign language, Melissa presented and pointed out how ways and means in which sign language can be promoted in school. Also, she demonstrated, illustrated with a story being told through sign language, as well as with the script in 2 more languages, making it multilingual. We hope that this reaches out to teachers and children in school. Thank you very much. We will continue this discussion further in the next discussion on language matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.